Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a stream here on Mere Tradition. It's been a long time since I've gone live, and I thought I'd go live today to talk about a couple things. I wanted to open up the Q&A format. Now, you've probably heard that there is all this rumor about Donald Trump purchasing Canada or taking over or whatever. And I'm not scoffing at that, and I'm also not really sure what to think about it. And I don't usually talk about politics on this channel. It's not very common for me to do that. Usually I'm talking about things that are sort of purely doctrinal and so forth. And but this is just a big deal. And also there are a lot of things that are a part of it. There are a lot of potentialities that I think are interesting that I thought it might be worth considering just for the fun of it. Then I want to move on to talking about my book, Charismania, and do a Q&A about the Charismatic Renewal. So if you are watching this live, either on YouTube or Twitter, you can, or X, I guess. It's hard to call it X. I guess it's getting easier. You can just post you don't have to like call in or anything. You can just post a question in the comments, and I can pull them up here. Thank you to everybody who's joined us so far. Yeah, I agree here. Margaret says, it seems to me Trump's statements are to light a fire under a few people to get them moving. Seems to be working. That's definitely part of it. And I think there's something else going on, which I think that we should consider as well. That's worth considering. So in any event, Justin Trudeau has just announced his resignation from the prime minister position in Canada. Now, I know there's a lot of skepticism on that, and I get it. You know, he hasn't actually, resigned yet. He's a liar, et cetera, et cetera. I understand all that. But Justin Trudeau is not the Lord of the universe. He's a mortal man. He is a politician in Canada. And as detestable as he is as a human being and all the terrible things that he's done, he is following a particular political process that is set in place for moments like this. So what he has done is he has announced his resignation. And there is now going to be a leadership campaign and convention within the Liberal Party of Canada to decide who will be the next leader of the party. You got to understand, outside of Canada, and many Canadians don't understand Canadian civics either. I would imagine most Americans don't really understand how their government works either, because a lot of it's kind of complicated, and why would you? But it's not as if, the prime minister resigns and then the deputy takes over. It's not like a vice presidential role here in Canada. That's just not what we have. He's the leader of the party, and he's a member of parliament. And because he's a member of the parliament, meaning he's been elected to go to Ottawa as part of his district, his riding, when he's there, he assumes the leadership of the party. If he resigns, there is no leader of the party. It doesn't go directly to somebody. So what they do in this situation is they have a leadership race while the person is sort of riding out the last 2 or 3 months until that race is over. In this case, Justin Trudeau has decided to basically pause Parliament, which is a special privilege. It's a whole other conversation. He has that privilege for various reasons, of part of Canadian electoral history, parliamentary history, and they're having the race right now. When that new person is selected, then he's gone. He'll still be in Parliament, I would imagine, and actually just be a member of Parliament as part of the party, although he knows there's going to be an election as soon as the next person is elected, because there'll be a confidence vote in Parliament, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Justin Trudeau is still the Prime Minister of Canada. He has announced his resignation, but as much as people want to believe it, it's not some sort of ploy or whatever. The gig is up for Trudeau. That's just how this system works. And unless you think that he's announced his resignation, the Governor General has put through the proroguing of Parliament, the pausing of Parliament, the Liberal Party of Canada is starting its campaign to bring an election cycle within the party to elect a new person, and then 2 months he's going to say, psych. I mean, I guess in theory he could do something like that, but there would be nothing to gain from that. That would be so unprecedented in Canadian history beyond there's just no way to even fathom that as being, there's no reason to do that. There's no benefit from doing that. It wouldn't do anything for him. So if you think he's a narcissist and he's about himself, that doesn't get him anything. It would destroy the liberal brand even more, and make things even more chaotic. It would still not stop the fact that as soon as he gets back, if he were to say, psych, I'm still prime minister, there would still be a confidence vote. There's no point to that, is all I'm saying. Even for a guy as detestable as him, it's okay to accept the fact that the gig is up for Justin Trudeau, and we can rejoice in that. He'll just be around until this process is finished while Parliament isn't doing anything. And I wrote an article explaining all this for the American Spectator, if you're interested. If you go to the website is spectator.org. It's on the main page right now, and it explains everything that's happened. Just, without much commentary, just explaining what is happening. You can find that there, spectator.org, and I explain it. But in any event, coupling with all of this news about Canada, Donald Trump has been making his statements about buying Canada. And I mean, you've seen the memes. Maybe I can pull up, maybe if I just find something here, Donald Trump Canada, if I search it on X. Well, that's that's it. Excuse me. Whatever. I can't find one. Oh, here's something. I won't play the audio. Well, maybe I will, actually. Let me just try to bring this up. Tell me if you're hearing this. I think the audio is going to be captured. Yeah, it should be. So I'll just play this here.
Mr. President, if we were to work under the assumption that you're serious about making Canada 51st state of the United States, the leader of the Conservative Party in Canada said, under no circumstance will it ever be the 51st state.
Maybe he won't win, but maybe he will. I don't care.
You had suggested.
Listen, I don't care what he says.
But Sir Lopez, you said you were considering military force to acquire Panama and Greenland. Are you also considering military force to annex and acquire Canada?
No, economic force, because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like. And it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada. But here's the problem with Canada. So many friends up there. I love the Canadian people. They're great. But we're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect it.
Okay, so that's the crux of what he's saying. I mean, when Trump started suggesting that, Canada should be the 51st state, I honestly thought to myself, this is just Trump just being funny. I love Donald Trump, by the way. I would vote for him 10 times over if I was living in the States. I know he's not perfect, but I would be voting for him. And but anyway, when I saw it, I just thought, okay, he's just being Trump. I mean, he's an entertainer. That's part of his act, and that's why he's so funny. But things like this, you go, I mean, somebody asks you a direct question about, are you going to use military force to take over Canada? And you don't deflect the question. You just answer it with a very black and white, no. We'll take it by other means. It's not like, well, we'll discuss that later. Or, I'm just worried about Canada's economic blah, blah, blah. Or Canada needs to get its act together. It's no, we'll take it by economic force. Now, here's the thing. Donald Trump is the progenitor. He's the godfather of the art of the deal. I've never read that book. Many of you may have. You can look up the synopsis of it. There's many articles written on it. I have a general idea. He's talking about negotiating. Trump is the master of negotiating. And one of the things that you do when you're negotiating is you use leverage. So how can you basically squeeze the person to get what you need? How can you get something more out of it with leverage? He is a master of narrative. He is a master of basically insults and belittling, but at the same time building you up, which creates this kind of almost abusive relationship that he does with a lot of people. That's a fact. And he's a master at making himself basically seem like he's got your best interests at heart after he sort of breaks you down. He's done that his whole career. We also have to remember that Donald Trump is, he's a joker, but he's not a joke of a person. How many things did people say about Donald Trump when he was thinking of running for the leadership for the Republicans back in 2015-16? It's crazy. It's a stunt. He doesn't actually mean it. There's no way that he's doing that. This is a TV star. He wants to sell more books. He wants more ratings. He's a Playboy celebrity. Well, what happened? He ends up winning the Republican primary. Then in 2016, when he's running for president, I mean, there were some people that thought he had a chance at winning, and I know many people loved the Trump phenomenon, and they had faith in him. But it was a pretty minority opinion, like a very small minority opinion, to use Justin Trudeau's pejoratives and epithets that he levels at unvaccinated Canadians. It was a fringe minority of people who believed that Trump could win the presidency. Not even people who supported him really believed it. Many people didn't. And they had every reason to not believe that he could win because it seemed impossible, and it on paper kind of was. Obviously, with history, with hindsight, you can look back and you say there was genius here, genius there. But people weren't saying that at the time unless they were in the fringe minority, so to speak. And he made them all, he proved them all wrong. Then he won another election. Then he won another election in 2024, if you catch my meaning. And Donald Trump does the impossible. He says crazy things. He proposes crazy things. People think he's out of his mind. And then he wins. That's what he does. Whether you like him or not, that's what he does. Now, that does not mean that I believe that Donald Trump actually wants to acquire Canada. And here's why. For one, making Canada a state doesn't actually make any sense. Making it one state. Canada's not as liberal as you might think if you're an American. The Liberals themselves don't actually have the popular vote here. Justin Trudeau is in many ways kind of an anomaly, politically speaking, in Canada's history. This woke stuff has really taken over our country like it has everywhere else. I mean, America's not immune to this. It's a blip, and people are getting sick of it. You know, Pierre Poilievre, who is our Conservative candidate, whenever there's an election called this year, whether it's in 2 months or 5 months or whatever, there's rumors that it could be sooner because there's legal challenges about whatever going on. Who knows? He's projected to win a supermajority, perhaps the greatest landslide in Canadian electoral history. And he is against the woke stuff. He's against the climate change hysteria. He's Canada first. He's about tightening up the borders. He's not anti-immigration, but he's not for open borders. You're not going to get an anti-immigration politician in a major Western country. It's not going to happen. I mean, that's just not, I don't care what your fantasies may be. You are not going to get a politician saying only white Christians or something. That's never going to happen. Okay. Even if you should want that, it's a different story, but that's just not going to happen. But he's against the open border stuff. He's tough on, he wants to do the slam, put him in the slammer for longer. If they get caught with drugs, he's like an old school conservative on so many policies. He's not pro-life. He's not a good Christian or anything like that. He's definitely not a leftist in most of his policies. He wants to reduce taxes. He wants to cut a bunch of his policy, his drill baby drill for oil. His policies are almost the same. If you actually compare Pierre Poilievre's policies and compare them to Donald Trump and that sort of America First agenda, you know, stop the mass immigration, clean up the border, stop with the climate change wackos, you know, get more American oil out there, you know, bring jobs home, you know, cut taxes. It's the same platform. We actually, Canada is not nearly as woke, leftist, socialist as many people think it is. I'm not saying we don't have a problem here. We do, just like America. Kamala Harris did not win, but she got 60 million people voting for it. That's a lot of people who are into a crazy, wacky, socialist, communist person. Both of our countries have issues. But it's not nearly the crazy leftist, socialist hellhole that you think it is when you actually live here and talk to people. Justin Trudeau won a majority government in 2015, which means he won more than 170 seats out of the 300 and so in Parliament. He lost that majority the next election immediately. Then he lost more seats in 2021. And now he's projected to lose the biggest loss basically in the history of the Liberal Party, where it's projected that they may have so few members of Parliament sitting in the House that they could all take basically a small airport shuttle to work together because it'll be less than 20. Okay. Justin Trudeau is a blip on the radar Canadian history. A lot of Canadians seem to remember this as well. Before him, there was Stephen Harper, who was not perfect, but his policies were not Justin Trudeau's. and it was about oil. And they protected the Christians. They even set up like a religious freedom commission thing to make sure there was no abuse of Christians and stuff internationally and nationally. It was, there was pro-lifers that had big positions in the party. This was in living memory of Canada just like 9 years ago. Okay. So Canada is not like, people like to say it's like another California. It's not. British Columbia is like California. Alberta is like Texas. Saskatchewan is like South Dakota. Manitoba's a mix. Ontario is a wild card. Quebec wants to be its own nation, and out east they're basically these mixes as well. Canada is not nearly as leftist socialist across the board as people would have you believe. But that being said, I still don't think it's in the best interest for Trump to even consider making Canada a quote-unquote state, because Canadians are also patriotic. Canadians love their country historically, just like everybody loves their country. If you're American, I hope you love your country. If you're Italian, I hope you love your country. If you're Mexican, I hope you love your country. If you're Swedish, same thing. I mean, it's a good thing to be a patriot. It's weird. It's honestly strange if you're not. If you don't love your nation, there's a problem there. You may not be happy with the state of it, but it's like your family. You should have some sort of affection for it, and it should make you really sad if things aren't good, and you shouldn't malign it and air the dirty laundry publicly and tear it down. I mean, that's, if you really think about patriotism as a virtue, it's very important. I'm as right-wing as a Canadian could possibly be. I'm like to the right of, I can't punch right because nobody's to the right of me, okay? I don't want America to take over Canada because I want Canada to stay Canada because I'm not American. There's nothing wrong with that. So I also don't think it would make sense for Trump to take over Canada, even though it's not as much of a guarantee that Canadians would all vote Democrat, mainly because it would be a tragedy for people and they would be extremely upset and sad about the Republican Party, which would destroy the potentiality of them getting votes for like a generation. So it doesn't make any sense. Even if you think Canada, even if you realize that Canada is not nearly as liberal and socialist as people make it out to be, because it's not. When you're here, you realize it, you see it. Excuse me. Even when you realize that, it still doesn't make sense for Trump to take over Canada for a lot of reasons. So what is he doing here? Because, again, Trump doesn't do things just for no reason. It's the art of the deal. He's presenting some sort of whatever, some sort of crazy prospect that's just not going to happen. So what is he after? I have a couple theories. I'm going to lay these out, and then I'm going to move on to some talk about the Charismatic Renewal, which I know these topics are not related at all, but it's a live stream. It's the first time I've done this in a while, and I'll take some Q&A. So start thinking about the questions you want to ask now, and you can ask about other things, but I'm going to talk about the Charismatic Renewal. Start thinking questions now, and when you do ask, put like 3 question marks at the front of it so I can see it amongst the comments, and I'll do my best. And I'll be here till about 3:30, so I got at least 45, 50 minutes. So what does Trump want? Well, no one really knows except for him and God, I guess. But there's an interesting thing happening in northern Alberta right now, which a lot of people are not maybe aware of. And I'm actually just going to pull up quickly here something to show it. It's a data center in Grand Prairie, Alberta. Okay. And where is it? It's done by, here it is. It is done by Kevin O'Leary. What's it called again? Just one sec here. Kevin O'Leary. Oh, I don't know why I can't find the actual website for it. That's strange. Whatever. I'll just bring up a video of it or a website of it. Okay, so here's an actual thing of it. So here is just an article. I don't know why the website. I looked at the website the other day. It's not there. So it's celebrity investor Kevin O'Leary is proposing a massive AI data center in northern Alberta, and Kevin O'Leary is like the Shark Tank guy, the Dragon's Den, the investor guy. He's Canadian. He's a billionaire. He's done all these things in business, blah, 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 blah. And this thing's a go. Okay, this thing's a go. It was announced by the the premier of Alberta as well recently around Christmas time. So what is this thing? This is a data center where basically as AI, and AI is a catch-all term, but as AI is progressing, this is basically changing the way that we do computing. AI is not just funny images. I mean, that's a good use for it. It can be funny. AI is more than that. It's supercomputing on steroids that are on steroids. Because of this, it uses an insane amount of energy. So what's happening is they're building these crazy massive data centers, which basically become like new cities. They're essentially proposing basically a new municipality, practically speaking, in Grand Prairie, Alberta, which is northern Alberta, near the oil. Excuse me. And the reason they're doing this is because it requires so much energy to run that you basically need to be near the energy source in order to do so. That's how powerful this thing is and how much energy it requires. These data centers are going to be the center of electronic civilization, of digital civilization as we know it, whether you like it or not. Canada will be a world leader in this, probably the most important region in the world. Kevin O'Leary's company is building one in northern Alberta and North Dakota. You could build 20 of them in northern Alberta. Why is that? Canada has, I think it's the third largest deposit of natural gas or oil, whichever one, in the world. Canada has so much oil and resources that we could make the Saudis blush at this point. Okay? And we're tapping into more and more of that every year. The only thing holding this country back from full exploitation of that and massively expanding the economy is basically because of our wacko environmentalists. Silicon Valley is where the innovation is. It's where the experts are. It's where the minds are. It's where the CEOs are. You can't build those data centers, at least right now, in those places because you don't have the access to the continual resources. Also, being in a northern climate brings down the necessity to cool the machines to the degree that you would have to do that in a more southern region. All of this means is that northern Canada, where the oil is the future of essentially artificial intelligence, supercomputing, digital civilization. That's what's happening. This is the horizon for technology. This is where the world is going. This is why I think one of the reasons, because remember, Elon Musk is also a Canadian. I don't know if he's rescinded his citizenship, but he's Canadian. His mother's a Canadian citizen. He went to university in Canada, which you can only do when your parents are citizens and you get your visa, come here and so forth. He's a Canadian by heritage. And he lived here for a while and went to Queen's, which is a good school historically. And he's been really pushing for Pierre Poilievre, who is will be the new prime minister after Trudeau for the Conservatives. The future of tech is in this AI stuff, whether you like it or not. And the heartbeat of that, the engine of that is going to be largely in Canada. What does Donald Trump want? Personally, I think he wants to back Canada into a corner, to have some sort of special agreement set up. And I don't think it's to make Canada another state. But what's happening right now are negotiations between the two countries on a bilateral agreement. There has been obviously replacement of NAFTA and so forth in the recent years. And I think basically Trump wants to make sure that America has essentially open access to this infrastructure that's being built in Canada, which will lead the world, objectively speaking, in this AI data center trend. And what will that mean? It could mean a lot of things. It could mean some sort of, I don't think they want Canada to adopt the dollar. And you got to understand something. It's in America's best interests for Canada to have its own currency. Why is that? Well, because it's cheaper for Americans to do business here. But we have all the same stuff. So, for example, Toronto is called Hollywood North. Because if the dollar is like, right now it's really bad. It's like 70 cents or 69 cents. Usually it's somewhere around 80, 85, right? When the dollar is 85 cents, that means you basically get 15% more of each dollar. Numerically, things cost very similar prices here. So if you go to a restaurant and if you go to Subway in New Jersey, it's going to be like $11.99 for the sub and the drink and the chips or whatever. in American dollars. If you come to Canada, it's also $11.99 for the most part. Most things are like that. Not everything, but most things. So if you want to make a Hollywood show or make a show for Netflix as a production studio, what do? Well, you pay your $15 million. You have $15 million budgeted, and you go to Canada, and that stretches further because the dollar is different. It's in the best interest for, and that's what happens all the time. Toronto is where tons of shows are. If you've ever watched a show about lawyers and cops and whatever, it's probably filmed in Toronto, but they say it's in New York or Chicago or something. But it's usually in Toronto or Hamilton even. In any event, I don't think they want Canada to adopt the dollar. But I do think they want basically something like an open access for this reason that I've expressed and many other reasons. What could that mean? I don't know. Could it be like another Puerto Rico? That's a possibility. Again, all of these things are hypothetical. But Trump says crazy things and then follows through. That's just what he does. So, I was talking to my wife about this earlier, and I was saying, man, oh man, this is insane. I can't even believe this is a conversation we're having. This is crazy. But isn't that what happens in history? Crazy things happen and you don't see them coming, and then they do. This could be a total joke by Trump. It could just be a stunt. Maybe he just wants to take revenge against Trudeau and the leftist Canadian media because Trump loves revenge and they've been really rude to him and mean to him, so to speak, over the last 10 years. Maybe he's just sick of it and he wants to just destroy them, destroy their brand. Maybe that's all it is. And he knows having a conservative party here is better for Republican interests. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But usually, Trump likes to pick at the bones of the carcass. He likes to pick at something there and get what he can. So I imagine there will be some sort of historic agreement met. I think he's pressuring the fledgling Liberal Party to oust Trudeau officially, meaning get him gone out of the actual role, not just waiting for the process to finish, to really pressure the situation to make him go away faster, to destroy the Liberals more and more, to bring up the Conservatives more and more. Elon Musk has been really promoting Pierre Poilievre. And obviously Elon Musk is involved in supercomputing. He's got his Grok AI, which is going to be the competitor to ChatGPT and all this. I really do. And also Elon Musk wants minerals, and Canada also has as many minerals as you can shake a stick at. And there's so much terrain that's never even been tapped into because it's so much more north than we've even had to go. But there's like a China's amount, basically an area the size of China geographically that no one's even touched with machines. And excuse me, I think that I think this is to push some sort of agreement where there'll be something like an EU agreement, not the same thing. I don't think we're going to adopt the currency. I think it'll be something like a bilateral agreement, which will make economic interplay much easier. That would help to make sense why Trump, is really pressing the border issue. Yeah, it's a matter of American security, but the Canadian border, as bad as certain things are, and there are obviously going to be horror stories at the border, going into the States, the numbers of people coming through Canada and going into America is like a grain of sand on a beach compared to the amount of people coming through the southern border. It just is. There are problems on the border, but they're basically problems of complete negligence because our ridiculous leftist policies have, they can be fixed with basically hiring a few more people and just having more of an emphasis on it. It's not like the southern border where there's literally thousands and thousands and thousands coming across all the time. This is very, very different. It's very difficult to sneak across the American border in Canada where there's no actual border station because you're talking about going through like crazy forests and cold weather and stuff. It's nothing like, it's still difficult in the south, but there's no industry about it. There's no coyotes bringing people across, we don't have that. So the fact that they're including Canada in with the Mexico border thing is kind of crazy because it's not the same thing at all. But if they're going to have greater mobility between both nations, like if you are ultimately as Trump planning some sort of, not takeover, but strong agreement that gives you much more access and much more mobility between nations for reasons of business. So we're talking about, for example, maybe not having to have a visa to work in both countries like they do in the EU. Maybe something like that. Who knows? If you're going to do that, there's going to be a lot more interplay between both countries. It's in your best interest to shore up the security. Trump has also been talking about how Canada needs to get its act together on its sea borders, his marine borders. Well, that makes sense if you're going to have a lot more American interests in parts of Canada that are not too far from important marine borders, which northern Alberta, although it seems like it's really far away, it's actually a hop, skip, and a jump from that area where British Columbia and Alaska meet, and there's a huge open ocean area there. That's something to consider. With the Arctic nearby, that's an ocean border. I just think that there's possibilities here where I don't think it's going to be taking over Canada. I don't think it makes any sense in that sense. I don't think it's worth it. But I do think there's going to be some sort of surprising agreement that will be of great benefit to both countries, and I don't want I don't think it's going to be the taking over Canada, but I do think there's going to be something else. Okay. Yeah, I know this person here is saying Canada has fewer data centers in comparison. Estimates place the number of data centers in Canada on 300 to 500. Yeah, but you're right. The Canadian market is growing. You got to understand, it's just about the future. You know, Canada has just an untapped amount of space and resources. And funny enough, we actually have universities that train the people. We have a lot of really important universities that train people for that stuff. They just end up going south because the jobs are better there. But if you keep them here, which the plan is, then they're going to stay. So I just think that there's a lot more on the horizon there. Those are my thoughts. Okay, I'm going to move on here. A couple more. Does Canada rely on the U.S. for national defense? Well, yes and no. We have our own military. Like, our military is actually quite good as far as how many people we have in our country. It's not some like rinky-dink thing. Canada historically has been known to have a very strong military per capita. It's just not as big as the United States. So we have our own national defense. But of course, Alaska being on the northwest, close to Russia, America has some reasons and interest in this area. And then, of course, Russia and the North Pole essentially basically touches Canada, and that region is up for grabs in many ways. So there's kind of this interplay which you can't really get away with. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to do some questions now. So I'm just going to scroll back here. I'm going to start talking about the Charismatic Renewal now. Nothing to do with Trump and so forth. And just last thing, comments like this, quit crying and get ready to be an American. God bless you. Comments like this, I'm sorry, this is just like really dumb and low IQ. No one's crying. It's just explaining and talking. That's the kind of stuff. Listen, I love my American friends and viewers, but don't fall into the stereotypes of just being ridiculously arrogant and low IQ, because it's not a good look. All right, as I said, I'm going to talk about the Charismatic Renewal, and you can find my book, Charismania. It's available in the description area. Actually, it's not. I didn't put it there. I should probably do that right now, actually. I think I can actually do that if I just... Oh, I have a big announcement as well. The audiobook is available. The audiobook is available. And I'm going to just put the link for the book in the description area. So just bear with me. There you go. Boom. I'm going to save it. And that should work. Let me know if that shows up. And if you just refresh the page, you'll be able to find it. The audiobook is up. I'm going to show you that quickly as well. If you go to audible.com, if you go to audible.com, Charismania, The Truth About the Charismatic Renewal, it's available for purchase. And I think I can even play for you a short little preview.
This is Audible.
That's loud. Augustinus Press presents Charismania, The Truth About the Charismatic Renewal by Kennedy Hall. Read for you by the author. I'll just fast forward it. Ill will toward any of you. However, You will realize in subsequent pages that I believe the renewal to be a damnable aberration in the life of the Church, and I am certain that many of the beliefs of renewal adherents are erroneous, if not outright heretical. Anyway, you can find that there, and you can go to audible.com. You can look up Charismania. In fact, if you look for the book on Amazon, which you can see there, you can do like see all formats, and there's an audiobook. So like it's just the same link. You can find it there. You can Kindle, audiobook, paperback. Boom. Right there for you. So thank you to everybody. It's still trending somewhere in the rankings. It's still number 13 in Catholic theology, number 36 in Roman Catholicism. It was at the top of the list of both of those for a bit, which is incredible considering I'm just a self-published guy with none of my own. I don't have any marketing team or anything like that. So thank you to all of you who have made this possible. And also my book, What Happened to Catholicism, is going to be out in March or April, whenever it is, in the spring. And you can find that at Sophia. And you can pre-order it if you want to now. Just look up What Happened to Catholicism, Sophia Press, and you'll find it. All right. So, Charismatic Renewal. Let's talk about it. I'm going to move up my thing here to see there's been lots of comments. I don't want to miss them, but I'll miss some of them. But I'll try not to miss as many as I can. If I do miss your question, please just repost it, deeper down because there are lots of comments, and then obviously I missed some of them. Okay, I have a question. This is not related to that, but do you have a PDF related about modesty standards according to the SSPX? I don't have a PDF. I know there's something up in our chapel, like on the wall when you walk in. I could just talk about that briefly. It is not a dogma of the Catholic Church about particular types of dress. There obviously are some letters. There's some letters you can find from Pius XII about female dress sent to the Catholic Women's League or something like that in Italy or whatever it was. There's some things about it that are important. I clearly recommend traditional dressing, but there's no like official stance that one can basically take doctrinally on it, as much as people might want to think there is. Even with guys, the shorts, no shorts, whatever, I don't know. It's not really something you're going to find in a catechism somewhere. In any event, but yeah, modesty is a big deal. Women should dress like women. Men should dress like men. We know what clothes are for women. Pants were not made for women. Dresses were not made for men. If you happen to be Scottish, wear a kilt. That's cool. A lot of it's custom. If you're from Burma or something and you have those kind of robes that men wear and stuff, some of that's common in other countries, cool, but we know what it is as Westerners. So that's just the way it is. Okay. Another question. You've asked the same question twice on there. Let's see here. Again, if you have your own question and it hasn't been answered and it's not being answered, just repost it. A lot of stuff here. I should probably address this as well. Someone says it wasn't a fringe minority that supported Trump in 2016. I didn't mean the people. I meant the expert class. Okay, that's what I was referring to. If I didn't speak clearly on that, I apologize. What I meant was it was hard to find anyone taking him seriously as far as the public comments were concerned. That's what I meant. Oh, here's a good one. I have seen people from every Catholic point of view, SSPX, FSSP, modernist, etc., speak out against Father Ripperger's promotion of the Auxilium Christianorum and laity using binding prayers. I have never heard people talk. I've never heard that talking against his Auxilium Christianorum prayers. I know what those prayers are. I am friends with Dan Schneider and Jesse Romero, who work with Father Ripperger. I cite Father Ripperger heavily in my book, Charismania. He wrote a book on the charismatic graces, and chapter 6 is basically, I owe that chapter to Father Ripperger. So thank you, Father Ripperger. Of course, I cited and paraphrased and, proper formatting and all that. So I don't know why the Auxilium Christianorum prayers there would be an issue. I've prayed them before. It's like pretty basic Catholic litany stuff, in my opinion. As far as the binding prayers, that is controversial. Some people don't like the binding prayer thing. There is a reality where you can find something like a binding prayer thing in some Protestant theology. I have also spoken to traditional priests of all stripes who come down on both sides of the equation. I don't know what to say about it. I do think there are distinctions to be made, and I can't speak on that authoritatively. I do know that, for example, if you look in the Christian Warfare book by the Society of St. Pius X, they have the exorcism prayer written by Leo XIII, and it's for the laity to say, and it's pretty intense. I remember reading it and praying it and being like, am I supposed to say this? But it's by Leo XIII. So I don't know if there's this perfect answer on that. I would just talk to a priest you trust. Because here's the thing, right? There's definitely, the second part to your question was, such things are based in Pentecostalism and charismania. Definitely there is an aspect of deliverance and spiritual warfare stuff that is totally Pentecostal and is bad. Like, when the people in the Charismatic Renewal and the Pentecostals, same thing. When they start acting like exorcists, we have problems. When they start acting superstitiously, we have problems. When they start I've got an ailment in my calf, and they're like, I'm going to pray over it and drive out those demons. It's like, we've got a problem. That's a big problem. But there is a legitimate tradition of basically spiritual warfare and prayers that you don't say every day that might seem different. And I have seen this, especially if you look up the exorcism prayer to St. Michael by Leo XIII. It's kind of surprising some of the stuff it's in there that you can say. So I don't know. I would recommend talking to someone at the Liber Christo Institute, I think it's called. You can just look them up. Look up Dan Schneider. Look up Jesse Romero. I think Kyle Clement is another guy. You could email Father Ripperger probably. He's probably got a contact thing. Most people do. I do. Most people do. Check it out and ask a question about it. And then talk to a priest you trust. But there's definitely a danger in some of this stuff with the way that it's been done by charismatics. But there is also, I've talked to traditional priests, even in the SSPX. I won't say who they are because they have disagreements as well. Men disagree on things, whether they're in the same order or not. And I've been surprised at some of the support for Ripperger's things from some society priests as well as not. And I haven't found a consensus. So I can't give you a perfect answer on it. In general, if you're not sure, stick to even Ripperger would say this. Stick to the basics. It's like if you go to confession, if you pray your rosary, if you examine your conscience, if you use the sacramentals, if you go to mass, if you're not exhausting all of the, things that you're completely sure about, then don't even move on to something else. Because I bet you, and this is what Ripperger has explained with his method, a lot of people that come for care because of demonic affliction and so forth, they put them on a method of basically just a rule of life. It's like, wake up at 6, pray the Angelus. Put Gregorian chant on in your house so you're always listening to it so it's not on other music. Go to mass, pray the missal, go to confession, pray the rosary, pray the Angelus at 12 and 6 in the afternoon and in the evening, read spiritual reading, and go to bed. And then those people are basically always 90%, whatever the number is, a large amount of the time they're actually healed from whatever is ailing them. So I would just say, stick to the basics if you're not sure. Okay. Let me see. Okay, this is a good question. What are the fruits of the charismatic movement? Why did Pope John Paul II and all following popes endorse the Protestant movement? Well, I'm going to answer this in two ways. First, I need to do a promotion for our men's conference. Our men's conference is in a month. February 7th and 8th, the Canadian Martyrs Men's Conference in Stratford, Ontario. The ticket information is at canadianmartyrsconference.ca, and I'm actually going to, as soon as I put the screen back, I'm actually going to put it in the chat area, I guess I can put it in the chat area if I do that quickly. Can I do that? Maybe my mods who are on there, if you want to do that as well, Maybe you can. I'll do it right now. There you go, CanadianMartyrsConference.ca. And I'll put it in the description area as well, but it's in the chat right now. And Canadian Martyrs Conference, February 7th to 8th. Father Marcel Stannis is the keynote, but we have a new keynote as well. And this is Father LaRue, who is the Canadian District Superior, which is he's a great guest to have, great guest speaker. I'll be there. Al Smith will be there, Bishop Fulton Sheen today. And thank you to our sponsors, including Catholic Heritage Tours / Regina Pilgrimages. It's honestly one of the best. It's the best men's conference you're ever going to go to. You get a cigar if you show up, which is great. You don't have to smoke it. You can give it to somebody else. It's just Catholic men. It's traditional Catholic all the way through. It's affordable. The hotel is affordable if you have to come from out of town. The fellowship is amazing. It's honestly just the greatest day. And usually there's not a lot going on in February, so you have no excuse not to come. So come. And link for that I will put in the description area to this podcast as I'm speaking right now. Because it should be there. So I put it in the chat, but I'm going to put it there right now. Let me just copy and paste this. I'll just put caps lock conference. Boom. All right. So this question here. What are the fruits? So, okay, we'll talk about the fruits in a second. Why did Pope John Paul II and all following popes endorse this Protestant movement? Well, John Paul II did not endorse the movement the way that people like to say that he did. He definitely was complimentary of it. John Paul II, when you look at some charismatic leaders met with John Paul II on various occasions. A lot of types of people meet with John Paul II on various occasions, and Pope Francis and so forth. This isn't like a stamped it, locked it endorsement of this or that as some sort of teaching of the church. Also, John Paul II endorsed a lot of things that Catholic popes should not endorse. I mean, he kissed the Quran and did a Sisi, the interfaith prayer. I mean, so that John Paul II was seemingly endorsing the Charismatic Renewal. That to me is not a compliment. I mean, there are a lot of things that John Paul II endorsed and promoted. I mean, he gave us girl altar boys. I know some people get really upset when you speak critically of John Paul II, but Pope Francis was made a cardinal by him. You know, he didn't come out of nowhere. In fact, you can look at, I did a show on this the other day, you can look back at, this was in my Modernism series, which is available at my Substack, meretradition.substack.com. And if you look in a document that John Paul II wrote about the synodal path, people like to think synodality and all this kind of stuff started with Pope Francis. It did not. It did not start with Pope Francis. It started with Paul VI. And John Paul II literally wrote that the synodal method, or whatever he called it, was basically the way forward, and that it was a way of dynamically interpreting the Second Vatican Council, which would continue to develop through synodal understanding. It was synodality, and John Paul II was a huge proponent of it. So that John Paul II endorsed it. That's unfortunate. A lot of the things John Paul II endorsed is really unfortunate, as hard as that may be to hear, but that's just what the history tells us. Now, what are the fruits of the charismatic movement? Well, the charismatic renewal is Pentecostalism. Pentecostalism is a heresy within a heresy. I go over this in my book, The Strict History of Pentecostalism, starting with the holiness movement, basically, and then with certain historical figures at the turn of the last century. It's Pentecostalism. All of the doctrines of being baptized in the Spirit, of the type of speaking in tongues that's alleged, of the types of exorcism, all this stuff. All of this is not Catholic. It's heretical from a heresy within a heresy, because Pentecostals were looked at as heretics within Protestantism. So that's telling you a lot. The allegation by the Charismatics is that the Holy Ghost was magically, miraculously outpoured on these Pentecostals on New Year's Eve 1900, so that midnight going into 1901. on these heretics, and that they were given some special outpouring that ushered in a new age of the Spirit. That is what's alleged. And, well, if that's true, that means that God used a Protestant heretical group to usher in a movement of religious holiness and so forth, a new apostolic age, and this started outside the Catholic Church. This is impossible. This is absolutely impossible. The Charismatics accept this, and they have basically adopted all of the errors of these Pentecostals. They cite them in their literature. The Pentecostals are their heroes and so forth. And so the fruits of the Charismatic Renewal in the Catholic Church are heresy, because Protestantism is a heresy. Pentecostalism is a heresy within a heresy. That's one thing. Now, as far as the fruits, meaning like what have we seen? Well, there have been various quote-unquote movements and revivals. I mean, people get excited about the renewal. There's lots of people that come through the renewal. I went through it. You might have gone through it. People like to talk about the sort of good fruits, but we got to understand what Christ means by fruits, because this word fruits is thrown around irresponsibly. When Christ talks about fruits in the scriptures, he talks about, vines and trees. By their fruits you shall know them, and so forth. It takes decades to understand the fruits of one of those trees. If you understand how grapes are grown, if you understand horticulture of orchards and things, we're talking about decades before we know what type of tree it is, what type of vine it is. And you have to cast the rest into the fire after it's shown to not be productive or poisonous. But you don't know right away. The Charismatic Renewal in the Catholic Church is 50 years old, and it's poisonous. It's heresy after heresy. Baptism in the Spirit is not a thing. The boom shakalaka tongues is not a thing. The gift of discernment, the way they understand it, is not a thing. The prophecies are not real. Some of them are perhaps demonic, so in that sense they predict the future, because the devil can prophesy in a sense, can help you understand the future with his hyperintelligence, but it's not. Anything that happens in the life of a charismatic that is from God is God's mercy to an ignorant soul, but it is not because of the Charismatic Renewal. It can't be, because it's heretical. Whatever graces someone receives in the Charismatic Renewal because they attend Catholic sacraments, they're ignorant of their heresy. Subjectively, they may not be guilty of that, and God is providing them sanctifying graces through the sacraments, which aren't charismatic. The Charismatic Renewal is poisonous. The fruits of it are awful. I go through my book what has happened in the renewal. The covenant communities, which are weird cults, crazy histories there. And also, there are tons of people who have negative experiences with the renewal. They just don't want to talk about it because the renewal is weird. I was not in the renewal as deep as some people, but I was around it, and I saw some of the stuff going on and was, part of some of the events. And my spidey senses started tingling after a while, and it was like really weird. And I remember thinking to myself, I can't believe this is happening around me right now. And people just kind of move on. And they don't want to talk about it. Because the thing is, charismatics tend to be really great people. They tend to be some of the they're on fire for their faith, even though they have heretical beliefs. It's like how Mormons are often extremely friendly. Mormons are like usually the friendliest people you'll ever meet, Mennonites tend to be pretty nice, at least where I live. Pretty friendly. So you just don't want to speak bad about people that tend to be friendly. Also, charismatics have made inroads in dioceses and things like that because the dioceses are in a state of total ecumenical chaos. I mean, you have to understand the amount of heresy that's spread throughout the church. Try to get a bishop to say there's no salvation outside the church nowadays. Good luck on that. Everybody goes to heaven except traditionalists and Hitler, according to the New Springtime, if you don't know. So anyway, the fruits of it are not what people think they are. There are plenty of promotional things, plenty of events and things like that, but there are tons of lives that are ruined. There is tons of homosexuality in the renewal in the covenant communities. There's a ton of New Age stuff going on. And this is all on top of the heresy. I hope that answers your question. Let me see if I can find some more questions here. There's the one that I just answered. I don't want to answer any more questions about Canada and the United States. Well, here's a good question. Also, someone asked, how is the defense audiobook coming? Defense is spelled with a C. Okay. What is your biggest reason for writing the book? It's my charismatic book. My biggest reason for writing the book is because, well, let me take a quick sip to make sure that my mouth is not dry so I can answer this without having to take a break. You got to understand my role in this whole thing. I'm nuclear. I'm nuclear for people. In the sense that I'm open about my SSPX affiliation. I'm open about my stance on the Novus Ordo. I say the quiet part out loud that most people can't say. Now, there are some that do say the quiet part out loud, but they're not actually associated with the SSPX. So they don't get the scarlet letter. That's my role. That's what's happened to me. I didn't choose it. It's how it happened. As Providence would have it, me being an SSPX attendee was just what was going to happen to me geographically if I wanted tradition. That was a very pragmatic decision in the beginning. Then I grew to love Archbishop Lefebvre and the Society for many reasons that I've talked about. So then I became not only someone who just attended, but someone who was happy to defend the Society against the attacks against the group of priests and the founder that I love so much. Many people hold similar views to me, but they go to the fraternity or the institute or a TLM indult or something like that. And so they get a nice fancy parish letter and they get to speak at your local parish saying the same things I say, but they're not, stained or tainted. So I'm in a position where I can say whatever I want. Obviously, I want to be a nice person. I don't want to be a jerk. But what I mean is I'm in a position where there's no point in me holding back what I believe to be true if I believe it's of God. I mean, not that God reveals things to me, but meaning that it's the truth that God has revealed and needs to be explained. All of us are given gifts. All of us. We can use them for ill. We can use them for good. For some reason, I'm a decent writer. People like to read my stuff. I have a decent ability to communicate. That's just how I was made. So I use that to try to help the cause of Christ the King. The Charismatic Renewal is a wicked, wicked heresy. And it hurts souls, and it hurts the Catholic Church. It's ecumenist at its root. It is an equality of heresy and Catholicism. You cannot, and I have this in the book, Pius XII and Mystici Corporis, just reiterating what was always taught. He said those separated from the church in faith and governance, meaning that they don't believe what Catholicism and they don't recognize the authority of the church. Like they're legitimate schismatics or heretics, or both. They cannot have the divine spirit and the Holy Ghost. The Holy Ghost cannot operate in an institutional sense in a heresy or a schismatic sect. If the Holy Ghost is operative in the life of an individual, this will push them towards conversion. They may ignore the Holy Ghost because we can all ignore God. We do that all the time. This is why we go to confession so often. God will never convert somebody to heresy. Never. That would be God willing evil. Doesn't happen. Charismatic renewal starts in heresy and ends in heresy. But it's called Catholic because we're in a crisis in the church. I used to be associated with various renewal activities, and I had a wonderful time with great people. I held off talking about the renewal for a long time because I did not want to hurt people's feelings. And eventually I said to myself, people are getting destroyed by this. I had people reaching out to me talking about the terrible things that have happened to them at the hands of so many of the major figures in the Charismatic Renewal that you wouldn't even believe. And no one who's in institutional Catholicism can talk about it because the Charismatic Renewal has a financial stranglehold over so many content creators. Not the independent guys, but you will never see the mainstream. Like, think about this. You are never going to find the mainstream commentators that could be talking about the Charismatic Renewal doing it. They are never going to do it. Why? Because you will not be on the diocesan speaking tour if you do that. Because there is a huge influence of all these charismatic communities, especially the covenant communities, especially across North America. If you come out and you make yourself a pariah by going after this stuff, you're done financially. I was already, quote unquote, excommunicated from polite society within the church. So I said to myself, who cares? I'll just go for it. Can't hurt me. I'm already the SSPX guy. It's not like, the parishes were saying, we'd love to bring that Kennedy Hall guy in to give a talk to our parish because we're okay with his SSPX stuff, but he better not go after the renewal. Like I was, that never happened. I was already persona non grata. Also, I realized that people were ready to hear it. So that's why I wrote this book. The biggest reason was because I wanted to uncover the problem, and I knew that I was in a position to do so because I couldn't be hurt. We can all experience hardship in our life, but I meant there's a lot of people that reached out to me to help me write this book. I'm talking professors, I'm talking apologists, I'm talking priests and dioceses. I will never reveal any of their names or anything about them. A lot of people helped me write this book. Sent me information, sent me documents, answered my questions. A lot of people help me. They can't come forward because they'll lose their jobs, because they'll lose book deals, because whatever. There's things. I'm in a position to do that, so I'll do it. That's the reason I wrote this book. Thank you, La Fe de la Iglesia, for the super chat. We need more information about the renewal in Spanish. I would love to have you in my channel, brother. Gracias por todo. Send me an email. Podemos hacer una entrevista en español. Quizás sería un poco algo errores con mi gramática, pero podemos hablar más o menos sin problemas. Entonces, envíame un mensaje. Send me a message in my email and we'll have a chat. I've got a bunch of emails to respond to, some other Spanish channels as well. Okay. There's a couple more questions. Let me see. Okay, here's one. Question. How could one combat elements of the Charismatic Renewal, for instance, women leading parish events instead of priests in Italian parishes? Un italiano. Benvenuto. You can't. I'm not saying be a defeatist. Non è possibile. Non si può. Perché? Why? The church is in a crisis. And the crisis in the church, it's not just conspiracy stuff. Listen, the reason I wrote, for example, this book coming out, whoopsie daisy, goodness, why did it do that? Oh, goodness. Ugh, I don't know why my camera just did this. I apologize. See, this is the problem with, wow. I am now here with, this is great. This is ridiculous. I am, let me see if I can do this. Does this work? Yeah, so I'm back there. If I go back to solo, why do I have another person with me here that has no camera? Sometimes I can't stand technology, guys. Oh well. Well, I'm going to have to go to screen share, I think. Camera switcher window. How do I do this? All sources. Take this person out. Remove. Boom. There we go. Fixed it. Okay. Sorry. Camera stuff. The crisis in the church, and I was talking about my... This is why I did it. I was talking about my book, What Happened to Catholicism. That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to press that button. The crisis in the church, it's not just about like Freemasons and conspiracies. That stuff's all important. Like, I'm not belittling that stuff. What I'm saying is you don't get to the point where the church is so weakened that she can be infiltrated by Masonry and Zionism and organized naturalism and stuff like that. You don't get to the point where you have an infiltration by Taylor Marshall, which is a great book. I'm not belittling any of that. I'm just saying you don't get to that point if the immune system is not already broken down where the viruses can then take over. The crisis in the church is a crisis of authority in many ways, as all sin is. The first fall from heaven is of Lucifer, and he rejects the authority of God and says, I won't serve. He wants to be God. This is the sin of Adam and Eve. You know, they're given the temptation to be like gods, knowing good and evil. They want to exalt themselves above their station. Do you know what I'm saying? It's an authority problem. So when you have a crisis of doctrine, it's sin. Heresy is sin. We have we have a crisis of sin in the church. So that's why some people will say, you know, who cares if the Pope is like super immoral or whatever? All heresy is sin. All sin is sin. It doesn't matter if it's heresy or immorality or whatever. We can't just brush it aside. It's sin. We will have sinners in the church forever, but heresy is a grave sin. And heresy is an attack on God Almighty. It's a sin against God. Heresy is worse than doing physical violence to another person. This is the first 3 commandments. They're all about God. You know, keep the Lord's day. I'm not doing it in perfect order, but, you know, I am the Lord thy God, no name in vain, and keep the Lord's day holy. It's about the holiness of God. The 3 most important commandments are about God. Then we move into neighbor. And even the first one that has to do with not God is father and mother. Because in the order of creation, in the order of nature, it's still hierarchical. Father and mother, authority. Because we have this crisis in the church, which has so much to do with authority, it's chaos. It's chaos. A parish that allows women to do anything in the parish is done. That parish is done. Because the priest who's in that parish, whatever he may be as a nice man, and he may be, and he's stuck in whatever, and I'm not here to judge. As Pope Francis said, who am I to judge? I'm kidding. I'm not assuming anything. I'm just saying I don't know the person. It's a crazy world out there. As Michael Scott said on The Office, crazy world, lots of smells. Who knows? I know priests in the Novus Ordo who hate everything going on in their parishes. They hate the Susan of the Parish Council stuff. They hate everything going on. You ask them why they let it go, and they say, I can't stop it. Because there's a problem in the diocese where you can even get to that point. It's abusive. It's tyrannical. They're basically kidnapped. They're psychologically broken down by the time they get done seminary. You can't. You cannot combat elements like this in a parish, because what's going to happen is feminism is a disaster. Feminism is a monster. Women who get confronted and men who are effeminate, who support this, who get confronted, they always get vicious. Just the way it is. It's the story of history. Look at how many empires have fallen because a woman was scorned. This is why Justin Trudeau is stepping down. His deputy prime minister, who was a woman, super lefty feminist person, didn't get the promotion she wanted and got blamed for something. What did she do? She burned Justin Trudeau. It surprised everybody. No one thought it would come. But he was spurned the way that only he was backstabbed in the way that only a spurned cultist could backstab somebody. That's what happens with feminists. If the feminism is already there, your parish is done. You have to find another parish. There's no way to fix that. I'm sorry that's not the answer you might have wanted, but that's the truth. Okay, let me see another question. Oh, La Fe de la Iglesia. How can I email you? Go to kennedyhall.ca. I'll put it in the chat. I have a contact me thing there. I think it says work with Kennedy. So go to kennedyhall.ca. And it's there. And I just have like a contact form, as you know, on websites, contact forms, and it's in work with Kennedy, kennedyhall.ca. Easy to find. There's only 3 links. One of them is outdated because it was for my Italy trip. My website just functions as a business card, basically. Yep, this is a common thing. Seamus says, my dad actually became apostate because his mom took him to a charismatic mass. She wanted him to go up and be slain in the spirit, so he just stopped going to church. Yeah, many such stories. They never tell you these. Let me see if there's any questions here. That's the last question I had. Joseph says, if you become American, you're going to have to spell defense the American way. Never, over my dead body. What did Benjamin Franklin say? Was it Franklin or Thomas Jefferson? One of them. Give me liberty or give me death. Give me defense with the sea or give me death. I will die on that hill. Any more questions? I have like 3 minutes. If you want to ask a question, last one, I can do that. Otherwise, I got to go. I don't know what my wife is making for supper, but it's always good. I'm a very lucky man. By the way, here is someone speaking Spanish. Oh, yeah, sorry. It's already answered. Quizá Kennedy está abierto a hacer un directo contigo. Yeah. All of the Spaniolis out there. Yeah, Jarko, this person said, I just posted one. Should I repost it? Yes, that will be the last thing I'll answer. Okay, I don't see it. Sometimes I don't see it. It's just a lot to see. I apologize. For all of the Hispanics out there, nos hermanos latinos, someone asks, do I address focus? No, I don't address everything. I do have a chapter on the covenant communities in there, and I talk about like the sword and the spirit in some of these places. There needs to be a book the size of a phone book written on these organizations, and I didn't even know that going into it. But yeah, I don't talk about focus on there. I don't know enough about them, but I see exactly what you're getting at. Okay, here's the last thing. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, don't be afraid to check out I'll just do a little run here of all my promotions just to be a sleazy salesman. So the Canadian Martyrs Men's Conference, February 7th and 8th. Check the link in the description for that. Best men's conference in North America. And Charismania audiobook, now available from Audible. And if you don't have Audible, but you want to listen to audio, that's where you can buy it. But if you go to my Substack, meretradition.substack.com, link for that is in the description as well. If you go to the main page, you can actually see I have these sections. So I have all the stuff about the Charismatic Renewal in one section. I have my new series I'm doing on modernism in one section. And I have the series I did about the kingship of Christ in another section, as well as just the basic podcasts. You can find those. Everything I put on YouTube is here, and the stuff that's premium is here as well. That's not on YouTube. This will not be on Substack because it's live. Substack does have a live function that's being built, but it's not quite there yet. But eventually I'll go both places. In any event, there is my video there. What was I saying here? If you go here to this charismatic section on the Substack, that's not a chapter. Here is the chapter. Each section, if you go to like voiceover.
Conclusion.
I think
The
that's
fulfillment
playing.
of all desire. In this book, I have attempted to provide an adequate historical.
So you have the actual audiobook there. So if you're not an Audible person, but you want to listen to the audiobook, I put it on Audible because it's just the easiest and it works the easiest for me, and it's a pain with other things, whatever. But if you want to listen to the audiobook, if you sign up as a premium member for the Substack, you will get access to the audiobook through all these chapters. And you can listen to it in the app on the phone, and it functions just like a podcast player. It's pretty simple. So the audiobook's available, and the book is also available, of course. Thank you to everyone who's reviewed it. We're still presently in the top like 15, 20 in Catholic books and a couple sections, and it's pretty amazing. Can't believe it. God bless you all. You're all the best. And that's all I have to say. Okay, so I'll do this last question. If I do this, am I going to be back? There you go. I didn't want to. I had a question. If I were to get baptized and confirmed in the SSPX, would the Vatican recognize it and let me commune at parishes as in full communion with Holy See? Well, the SSPX is in full communion with the Holy See because there's no such thing as full communion in the sense that people say it. I'm not attacking you for saying that. I'm just saying. Anyway, I addressed that in my SSPX book, which you can find at Amazon. Baptism is baptism. Confirmation is confirmation. If you're baptized, actually, everyone who's baptized is Catholic, technically. Like, there's no such thing as Protestant baptism. So if you are baptized, you receive baptism. There's only one baptism. It's Catholic. As far as confirmation is concerned, you are confirmed in the Catholic faith, and you receive a special outpouring of the Holy Ghost. In fact, back in the 1990s, there was one of the bishops of the society. At the time, it was Bishop Williamson. He had confirmed various individuals in Hawaii. It's a special case called the Hawaii Six. You can look it up. It's in like SSPX lore, traditionalist lore. And the local bishop tried to excommunicate the people who had their confirmations done. But guess what? Guess who overturned it? Cardinal Ratzinger, of all people. They could not receive a penalty. So they were baptized. They were confirmed in the Catholic Church. They tried to say they were excommunicated, and they weren't. And that was like 30 years ago. The situation is obviously ameliorated in that sense since. So yes, you don't have to be allowed. Well, if you wanted to go anywhere for Mass as a Catholic who's baptized by a society priest and confirmed by a society bishop, or a priest if there's a reason of necessity, if they're coming in as an adult or something, that's the same kind of thing. Priests can do that. If that sort of thing happens, you just go to Mass wherever you want to. If you want to go to Mass somewhere else, you just go to Mass. You don't have to ask permission. For goodness sake, they're bringing heretics to say Mass in the Vatican, like Anglicans and Eastern Orthodox. So, yeah, you're baptized. You're not baptized and confirmed in the SSPX because it's not an entity that's its own religion. You're baptized and confirmed by Catholic priests who have gone to the SSPX seminary and are part of that Society of Apostolic Life, just like you're baptized by a Dominican or a whatever. Okay. Oh, yeah, someone asked... Last thing I'll say, yeah, once a validly baptized Protestant denied the Catholic faith, however they leave the church. Yes. I'm just saying there's only Catholic baptism. If you look in actually, I have this in the book. I have a chapter on no salvation outside the church. There's a whole chapter on this in the Charismatic book. And one of the popes, can't remember, I have a ton of citations. And he was talking about a child who's baptized by, I think, the Anglicans, whichever Protestant group he was talking about, is a Catholic until he and he says until he can understand the difference between right and wrong. So like he's at the age of reason and he chooses his sect, but he's a Catholic before that because he hasn't renounced the faith. So yeah, it's Catholic baptism. There is no such thing as non-Catholic baptism. All right, I think that answers it all. That's everything I got for you, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you all. Check out the links in the description for everything I talked about. And I'll see you again soon. This was fun. I'll do some more live stuff as we go here. This has been Mere Tradition. Until next time, God bless you all.